Tonight, a desperate search continues in Arizona for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show anchor and former Court TV correspondent Savannah Guthrie. Nancy vanished from her Tucson area home late Saturday night under terrifyingly mysterious circumstances. Law enforcement has treated her home as a crime scene, saying evidence suggests Nancy was taken against her will and did not leave on her own. Blood found at the residence has been confirmed as hers, and key surveillance devices were disabled in the early morning hours, deepening concern. Why would someone abduct an 84-year-old woman under darkness in the early morning hours? The answer may lie in a ransom note sent to several media outlets that references specific details from the crime scene, though investigators have yet to publicly confirm the authenticity of this letter. With a deadline approaching, concern is growing. Nancy is considered a vulnerable adult with limited mobility and critical medical needs, which makes the urgency in bringing her home all the more grave. Meanwhile, Savannah and her siblings have made direct pleas to the author of the ransom note, asking for proof of life, asking for further communication so they can bring Nancy home. Tonight, we are live with reports from Arizona with Where is Nancy Guthrie? A Court TV Scripps News Special. Good evening, I'm Vinny Politan, and tonight you're watching Where is Nancy Guthrie? A Court TV Scripps News Special. And we'd like to welcome all our viewers from Court TV, Scripps News, ABC 15 Arizona, and K-Gun Tucson. We have a lot to get to this hour as we dive into the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. And tonight we have a team of journalists standing by with the latest updates in this case. Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas outside the Tucson home where the Guthrie family is staying. Scripps News Group reporter Ashley Holden in Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. Scripps News Group's Craig Smith is joining us from the Pima County Sheriff's Department headquarters, and we'll have a special report from Lori Jane Gliha in Denver, Colorado. First, let's head out to Scripps News Group reporter Ashley Holden, who is live tonight in the Catalina foothills. Ashley, where exactly are you tonight?
Well, we are right down the road from the home of Nancy Guthrie, and we were actually sitting outside of her home waiting to go live, and then we were asked by deputies. They pulled up and asked us to move about a block away. They told us they were doing follow-up investigation, and we have seen deputies and the FBI here on scene, and all of this came a few minutes after we got this statement here. I want to read it to you. A big development. The FBI and PCSD aware of a new message regarding Nancy Guthrie. Investigators are actively inspecting the information provided in the message for authenticity. That is what we know so far. Big developments, though, this afternoon. And of course, as you can see behind me, deputies, FBI still on scene following up here tonight.
Ashley, what can you tell us about the hours now leading up to and after Nancy Guthrie's disappearance?
Well, we know that she was doing typical things. She was having dinner with family. We know that she was dropped off at her home. But then we also know that law enforcement has been able to track down a few details, and we have been connecting those dots from the moment Nancy Guthrie was reported missing until now. Law enforcement says that at approximately 5:32 p.m. on Saturday evening, Nancy Guthrie took an Uber to her local family's home to have dinner. Later that night, her family dropped her off at her Tucson home. Law enforcement highlighting the 2 minutes between the time her garage door opened upon her return home and when it closed.
At 9:50 p.m., that garage door closes. It is that time we assume that Nancy's home and probably going to bed.
Early Sunday morning at 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera at Guthrie's home was disconnected. 25 minutes later, software detected movement on a camera, but no video is available. Shortly after, her pacemaker app shows it disconnected from her phone. Later that morning at 11:56 a.m., the family checked on Guthrie and discovered her missing moments later. 911 was called and law enforcement arrived on the scene 12 minutes later.
Do we have a description yet of the subject? 84-year-old female, unknown clothes, not super mobile.
That evening, the Pima County Sheriff's Department announced Guthrie's disappearance on social media. Later that night, the department's sheriff addressed the investigation for the first time.
We're here on a search and rescue mission, we hope, but we're looking for a missing person, Nancy Guthrie.
On Monday, authorities announced they believed Guthrie was kidnapped, abducted, or otherwise taken against her will. That night, Savannah Guthrie posted a message asking people to please pray. On Tuesday, KGUT, the Scripps news station in Tucson, received an apparent ransom note referencing Nancy Guthrie. It demanded several $1 million in Bitcoin by Thursday at 5 p.m. local time and gave a second deadline for Monday. President Trump addressed the case for the first time that afternoon.
I think it's terrible. Very unusual situation, but we're going to find out.
On Wednesday, investigators returned to the scene of Guthrie's home, where they appeared to collect more evidence. That night, her children posted a gut-wrenching video message addressing their mother and her potential kidnapper.
Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you. Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again.
The children also addressed reports of a ransom note and asking for proof of life.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen.
On Thursday, investigators said they believed Nancy Guthrie was still out there and revealed that a DNA test of blood found on the home's front steps belonged to her. They also said they were still working to identify a suspect.
We have nobody of interest or any suspects that you would consider a prime suspect. We're just not there. We're not there yet.
Thursday night, Guthrie's son made another plea to her captor.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
The FBI announced on Thursday a new $50,000 reward leading to Guthrie's return or the arrest and conviction of her captor. And I want to let you know, guys, even with this development of this new message, FBI, PCSD, they are still asking for tips in the case. For now, live from Tucson, Ashley Holden, Scripps News Group.
All right, Ashley, thanks so much. And if anything breaks out there tonight, let us know. We'll go right back out to you for all the latest. Right now, though, I want to bring in some special guests who are joining me, criminologist and investigative profiler, Dr. Casey Jordan, and private investigator specializing in missing persons cases and owner of Ferris Investigations. John Fariso is with us as well. Great to have you both here. All right, this big news that Ashley just brought us, right? We've got another communication to one of the local news outlets that received one of the first ransom note, and they're pushing everyone away from the home, and there's a lot of activity now back at Nancy's house. What is that telling you tonight, Casey?
All right. Well, the biggest thing that we have heard is that the communication that was received today by KOLD is so specific, and that the tone or the voice or the writing seems to match the original request for ransom money, the Bitcoin. Now, the rumor is, because we don't really know what's in this particular communication, that it is not a demand for money. So it had to have conveyed, we are guessing, information about Nancy, because remember, what Savannah demanded, basically, 2 nights ago, was proof of life. And then last night, we had her brother Cameron asking for a channel, a line of communication. This is interesting. The reason I think they're back out at the house is because there's something in that communication that will try to validate that whoever is sending it was at the house and definitely has Nancy. Something very specific about the house that only the abductor could know. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we got the communication mid-afternoon and that they're back out at the house today. I think they're trying to verify the legitimacy of this before taking any further steps.
John Fariso, do you think this is the focus, that hey, this is a kidnapping. It's tracking, everything that we know. So we've got to ensure that the person who is making these communications or persons are connected to what happened in Nancy's house?
Well, this is very interesting for a missing person case because it's a kidnap, so it stands out. And now you have a ransom, and in our modern world, this ransom is coming through email, digital. So they have to look at that, and they have to also realize this is a crime, which is just sending that ransom. They have to have experts, and I'm assuming Pima County in Arizona has the experts with them and with the FBI that they're utilizing. They'll have to digitally go through that and look at the wording, look at the spelling, see where it came from, because these communications can come from very far away, and it is, from what everybody's saying, it is a lead at this point, and they have to look into that because this is a serious crime.
Dr. Casey Jordan, getting back to who may have done this, right? It seems like it's someone that had some level of prior knowledge, or someone who, at a minimum, spent a lot of time studying up on Nancy Guthrie's situation. It's not, you're not randomly going into a house, grabbing someone, saying, okay, let's figure out who we're going to try to shake down here, right?
Studying up is the key. Now, we know that the neighbors say that over a month ago, there was some report of trespassers. I mean, whoever did this, it's either an inside job because they had been to the house before, and there have probably been hundreds of service providers at that house over the years, between landscapers, cleaners, home health care aides, the pool guy, but also understand that so far the information that they are putting in those communications, trying to prove that they are the kidnapper and were at the house, what we know, of course, different than all of the information the police know. I mean, most of that information could be gleaned by satellite imagery. They have to be way more specific than that. I mean, the location of the Apple Watch, that could be a guessing game, or it could have been from a leaked crime scene photo. I mean, the bottom line is that we still have to remember it's entirely possible that the demand for ransom is a hoax and completely unrelated to the abduction of Nancy. I know that people are like, no, of course it's connected, but I guarantee you the police are currently operating with a number of different theories, and that is that the Bitcoin demand is unrelated to Nancy. Unless they can provide proof of life, they're probably going to continue with alternative theories that Nancy could have been abducted by other people. Maybe it was a home invasion gone wrong and she died accidentally and they took her out of the house. There are so many scenarios that could make sense. But right now, they've got to pursue the communication that's on the table as of today.
John Fariso, how much of a strain can this put? I saw you nodding your head. How much of a strain could this put on investigators having to follow many different paths?
It's a huge strain because the ransom was asked. It has to be looked at. Even if it is a fraud, it has to be looked at because, like I said earlier, it is a crime. Regardless, even if it is a hoax, it is a crime and needs to be investigated. There's a lot of strain on this case, it seems, but it could go low tech, which would be the neighbors' security footage, their cameras they have. I doubt that these individuals or individual has disabled all of them. So even if they're wearing a mask and they're covered, there are professionals that need to go through that footage. And is there a pattern of a person at that time, or was there a trespasser days prior? They have to narrow that all down to the height, the weight of the person in those videos. Digital forensic experts need to look at that and decipher if that is another clue they need to go with.
John Fariso, thanks so much for your help. Dr. Casey Jordan's going to stick around. When we come back, what do we know about the alleged ransom notes? Don't go anywhere.
We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously.
A deadly school shooting.
I just started hearing gunshots.
Now, the father of the alleged shooter
is on trial.
Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son to possess a weapon.
The Gave My Son a Gun murder trial next week on Court TV.
She loved her kids. She loved her husband.
I know her innocence.
But she's also charged now with his murder. I never knew evil like this existed.
Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again.
We are aware of a ransom letter that was sent to the local media and then to national outlets. As with every lead, we are taking it seriously.
Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the search for Nancy Guthrie. Let's head out right now to Scripps News Group's Craig Smith, who is live outside the Pima County Sheriff's Department headquarters in Tucson. Craig, I know you've been looking into the ransom notes.
Right, the ransom notes, and you know, this new communication that we've been talking about, we can't say with full confidence whether it is from someone entirely new or whether it is a follow-up to an earlier note. Now, normally in a kidnapping, you would expect the family to receive a ransom note almost right away, but in this case, the first note we know about, at least, came to us at KGUN 9 in Tucson by email on Tuesday. That's almost 2 full days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Kidnappers left them no way to communicate, and they do want to talk.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please, reach out to us.
But we know of at least one man arrested and charged with sending a fake ransom note. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos worries the family will be desperate enough to pay a scammer or pay the real kidnapper and still never see Nancy Guthrie again.
You know, that's always a fear, right? We just know that we don't know who we're dealing with. We don't know what we're dealing with.
The note reporters received demanded $4 million in Bitcoin, escalating to $6 million as of Thursday. It threatened to kill Nancy Guthrie if there's no payment by Monday. The FBI says it advises families not to deal with kidnappers, but leaves the decision up to them. Now, the Sheriff's Department is telling us don't really expect an update based on the new activity we've seen out at the house or this new message that we've been talking about. But they say once there is a significant development, they will call us into a briefing. Reporting live in Tucson, back to you, Vinny.
All right, thanks so much. Craig Smith reporting for us. Let's bring in our guest, retired FBI Special Agent, Professor of Practice at the University of New Haven, Kenneth Gray, and private investigator, safety and security expert, and author of Prepared, Not Scared. Bill Stanton is with us. Great to have you both here. Kenneth, I'll begin with you. How important is it to figure out if the first ransom letter is connected to this new one that they have received?
So the continued communication, if this is the same person or persons making this contact with the family, it's very important because it shows that they are responding to the plea for some sign of life. Whether they actually have provided that or not, we don't know because they have not shared the details of the second communication. But it is very important because it is trying to eliminate the possibility of someone else that is trying to scam the family, get involved with it, and not actually be involved with the kidnapping.
Bill, let me ask you, how different is this missing persons investigation / potential kidnapping than cases that you've seen? Because in the cases I've covered, I've never seen anything quite like this. And what's your gut telling you here?
Well, we have the added element of celebrity in so much as Nancy Guthrie. We have the networks involved, and we're literally, it's almost like a reality show. It's a sad reality show that we're all at the edge of our seats with social media, the demand letter allegedly going to TMZ. It's playing out in real time, and it's sadly like a video game. And hopefully this is reality and everyone ends up safe and secure.
Kenneth Gray, so if in fact this note is connected, and the first note said there'll be no more communications, and then there's more communication from the potential kidnappers here, what does that tell you, if anything, about them and how police will react to that?
Well, the family did not provide the Bitcoin ransom money just in response to the one-way communication. Instead, they responded with a plea for a sign of life to open up communications with them. And so this is in response to that request for additional information with request for communication. So at least this is showing that the kidnapper is responding to the family, and hopefully that means that the kidnapper is also taking care of Nancy.
Let me ask you, Bill, how much do you think this is an inside job or an outside job? When I say inside, I don't mean just family. I mean anyone who maybe was inside the house, worked as a vendor, worked as someone maybe who was some sort of an aide or housekeeper, anything like that, versus a complete stranger to Nancy Guthrie?
Yes, it's an excellent question. What you're referring to is called touch access. Anyone that could potentially have touch access. Who's that, to your point? Let's say they had a pool, a landscaper, a delivery guy, Uber Eats, or at church, whether it's, again, a landscaper, someone that lights the candles. I think undoubtedly it's someone with connective tissue to this family one way or the other, whether it's within the family or within touch access. Statistics such as this will go to, in my opinion, it's someone that's aware, that knows of the comings and goings, etc., of the mother.
Kenneth Gray, we only have about 40 seconds left here. If it's someone who is connected, does that make it easier to solve or more difficult?
Well, it certainly gives you a pool of people that you can start digging into as far as investigation goes. Identify who they are, start digging into who they are, what the connections are, if they have any types of financial problems themselves, as opposed to the entire universe being possible suspects. It narrows it down to something that is somewhat more manageable.
Kenneth Gray, always great to have your insight. Bill Stanton, great to see you again. Thank you. All right, folks, when we come back, Court TV's own Cody Thomas returns to the scene.
As we're driving up to it now, we look out in front of me, you can already see that the street lights are gone. It's, we're heading more into the desert right now. You don't see any cameras on this street, but this is what it would look like as we're driving up toward Nancy's neighborhood.
I want to stress to you, right, and it is really important, Miss Guthrie, Nancy Guthrie, is of great sound mind.
Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light.
She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day.
Welcome back to all of our viewers from Court TV, Scripps News, ABC 15 Arizona, and K-Gun Tucson as we continue our coverage in the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. Let's check in right now with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, joining us live from outside of Annie Guthrie's home in Tucson. Anything happening at the home where the siblings have been staying?
Well, Vinny, it's pretty quiet here at the moment, but what I can tell you is that in the last half hour here, we did see family members arrive back here at the house behind me, here to Annie Guthrie's house. Unclear where they were coming from. I was only able to identify Nancy Guthrie's son, Cameron, in the passenger seat. They do have security out here around the clock, blocking off the driveway, keeping everything safe for the family. But when they arrived back here in the car, they went straight into the driveway or into the garage, right into the house. No movement since then. And other than that, Vinny, I'm looking around. There's a small media presence here, but at the moment, no movement at all outside of the family arriving from wherever they were coming from.
Yeah, and obviously the big news is this second communication, so we got to keep an eye on that home as well to see if there's any movement with the family. Now, I know you went to Nancy's home today. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Vinny, I went back to the Catalina foothills area near where Nancy Guthrie's house is because I really wanted to give viewers a lay of the land, a survey of the land of what it looks like in the daytime and show that it's not your typical traditional subdivision. It's kind of off the beaten path. And Vinny, I learned from neighbors there that that community is what they call a dark sky community. Take a look at this. Here now in the Catalina foothills area of Tucson, Arizona, driving to Nancy Guthrie's house, giving you an idea of what it would look like in the daytime. And you see here in front of me, we're kind of on a main freeway here. You see your typical street lights, your typical intersection, and most importantly, you see street light cameras catching cars coming through the intersection, license plates, all of that as you would see in a normal neighborhood, a normal freeway, a normal busy freeway in any neighborhood across the country. But the thing about Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood is that it's not a typical subdivision. It's a little bit more remote out here in the Catalina foothills. As we're driving up to it now, we look out in front of me, you can already see that the street lights are gone. It's, we're heading more into the desert right now. You don't see any cameras on this street, but this is what it would look like as we're driving up toward Nancy's neighborhood. We'll get there right here in a second. But coming up here, about to swing a right into the neighborhood where Nancy Guthrie lived. You see a little marquee out here labeling some streets. But again, not your typical subdivision. They have some houses out here on some acreage. They're not typically juxtaposed as you would see in your traditional neighborhood. But one thing to notice, as we're on this street off the main road, no street lights, no surveillance cameras, nothing out here. I mean, you can see the fronts of some of these houses. Some of these houses probably have their own Ring cameras, their own surveillance, their own personal surveillance systems, but no street lights on the street, no cameras on the street to catch anybody coming out here. All we see is some poles with some electrical wiring. But one thing that I learned out here talking to neighbors is that this community here is something they call a dark sky community, meaning there are rules and regulations about light pollution in this neighborhood, which is probably the reason they don't have many street lights out here. It's a dark sky community. They vote on this, and it's pretty much for the purpose of people who want to stargaze, people who want to see the night sky, see the stars very clear. Sometimes in the areas where there's astronomy activity, just to see the sky clear at night, which is a nice little tidbit knowing as to why it gets so dark out here. But you can see as we're heading towards Nancy's house how remote it is out here. You pretty much look like we're in the middle of the desert outside of some of the houses we're seeing. You see plenty of brush, plenty of cactus as we're nearing Nancy Guthrie's house. We're now nearing Nancy Guthrie's house. You see there's media activity here. There's a bunch of cars parked on the side of the road for obvious reasons out here covering this story about Nancy's disappearance. We're gonna roll through by some of this media presence fairly slowly. And once we get up here, you'll see Nancy's home on the left. And you see the media presence there. And as you look towards your left over here, this is the home of Nancy Guthrie. This is the crime scene that FBI investigators, Pima County Police have been searching, processing for the last few days. That was Nancy Guthrie's home. But again, out here, you see that it's a pretty remote area. No street lights, no street cameras to catch anything out here, especially in the night hours. Now, Vinny, I also went out to the neighborhood at night to get a better feel of what it may have looked like the night that Nancy was allegedly abducted. And, you know, Vinny, you're looking at video of that on your screen now. You can see, even with my headlights on, of course, you can see what's directly in front of me, but peripherally, you still see how dark it can get. Now, Vinny, while I was in the neighborhood, I did speak with a neighbor who has lived there for 17 years, and she told me how scary it is knowing that this happened so close to home. And she also talked about how police knocked on her door late at night, one night this week, part of the investigation. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Certainly alarming, to say the least, that something like this could happen in this small and pretty quiet neighborhood. I had police officers knock on my door about 9 o'clock a couple nights ago, and ring my doorbell, and of course that scared me. It was dark and like what, and of course they were canvassing the neighborhood to see if people had any cameras outside, ring cameras, thing like that could help. My camera had been down, and ADT was actually at my house Monday, and my camera was not up and running until about 5 o'clock Monday afternoon.
And Vinny, she went on, continuing to talk about how police are continuing to survey the area intensely. She talked about police helicopters flying over, even flying so low that she felt that the helicopters might land on the top of her house. So the investigation is still intense and very much so still active in that neighborhood, Vinny.
All right, Cody Thomas, thanks so much. Let's bring back in our guest, still with us, Dr. Casey Jordan, and Bill Stanton is back. Dr. Casey Jordan, let me ask you, going through that neighborhood and understanding how dark it is, how far off of the main road that Nancy's home is, inside, like, you have to know. You had to have been there. You've had to have cased it out. You had to have a real plan to just get around in the dark.
Absolutely true. But one of the things that works to the detriment is that all of that scrub, the cactus, all of the foliage, if you will, in the desert, the theory would be that maybe somebody came through the desert, but they would have to, on ATVs or something, but they would have to know the area extremely well and know that the houses were set back. I mean, fascinating that the neighbor's camera also wasn't working on Sunday, right? Is that a coincidence? And Nancy's wasn't working. You know, these are the kind of things the police are going to go through. Who has reason to be in this neighborhood all the time? Do many of the neighbors use the same landscaper, use the same pool guy, use the same security firm? But we do know there was that report of a trespasser in the area. Whoever did this was highly, highly organized. No matter what, whether who abducted Nancy is the same entity or person who's now demanding the ransom remains to be seen. But wherever Nancy is, whoever took her, cased the place in advance or knew it very well beforehand and left no tire tracks, no footprints. As far as we know so far, no DNA, no trace evidence. So a tremendous amount of planning went into this, but they're operating with the confidence of people who know the area and probably know the house. I mean, I'm sure the police are considering everything, including the neighbors.
Bill, are you surprised that 2 days ago, they're canvassing the neighborhood looking for home ring video from people?
No, I'm not surprised at all. What I am surprised is that they didn't necessarily, my understanding through reporting is that they didn't necessarily, tape off the crime scene. They didn't leave a security. They didn't leave police presence to keep the integrity of the crime scene pristine. There were reporters going on property. I think there was a reporter or a journalist that actually found the blood. So, it was a little egg on the face of the local constables over there. And, I just hope interpolitical rivalries or envy doesn't come into play. They should be handing, the keys, the proverbial keys over to the feds and let them take first position, in my opinion, if they already haven't done so.
Dr. Casey Jordan, I guess the perfect crimes are the ones that are never solved, right? The rest of them we see here on Court TV. What type of mistake do you think whoever is responsible here may make or may have made?
It's going to be a sensitive thing to talk about, but I think the biggest mistake was taking Nancy from the home. They thought it was genius to leave the Apple Watch behind because it would have had a locator ability no matter what. And yet separating Nancy from that Apple Watch means that her pacemaker may not work properly. Everyone keeps talking about how she needs medication. She needs her pacemaker to work before everything else. I would argue that the biggest mistake was probably taking Nancy from her home, presumably without her medication and her pacemaker syncing with Bluetooth through that Apple Watch, which we believe was left behind. And that puts Nancy's health in grave danger. We, of course, want her to be alive and want her to come home. But if her fragile health has failed, then these kidnappers, if indeed that's what they are, and if indeed who took her is the same entity requesting all this Bitcoin, they may currently have nothing to negotiate with. And all of these communications are a Hail Mary pass trying to get a desperate Guthrie family to put money in their account, believing that they're going to get their mother back, when in fact that may not be possible at this juncture. And I think that's why the communications are incredibly spotty. Who's ever heard of waiting 3 to 4 days to make your ransom demand and then just kind of like figuring it out as you go and communicating through the news network? Generally, kidnappers do not want the news agencies involved at all. So I think a bunch of mistakes have been made. Listen, if Nancy is no longer with us and these criminals decide to abandon the project because they don't get any of their Bitcoin and no one pays them anything, they could just ride off into the sunset, and we may never, ever have closure to this mystery.
Dr. Casey Jordan, Bill Stanton, thank you both so much. We're out of time for this segment. When we come back, how do investigators handle these high-profile kidnappings? We've got a special report on that next.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her.
A deadly school shooting.
I just started hearing gunshots.
Now, the father of the alleged shooter is on trial.
Mr. Gray knowingly allowing his son to possess a weapon.
The Gave My Son a Gun murder trial next week on Court TV.
She loved her kids, she loved her husband.
I know her innocence.
But she's also charged now with his murder. I never knew evil like this existed.
Right now, we believe Nancy is still out there. We have nobody of interest or any suspects that you would consider a prime suspect.
To those imposters who are trying to take advantage and profit from this situation, we will investigate and ensure you are held accountable for your actions.
As the search for the mother of Savannah Guthrie continues, we're breaking down what may be happening behind the scenes with an investigator who knows what it's like to handle a high-intensity kidnapping case. Scripps News senior national investigative correspondent Lori Jane Gliha is live now with that part of the story. Lori Jane?
Yeah, Vinny, almost exactly 4 years ago to the day, a housekeeper was kidnapped from a Colorado ranch owned by former New York City mayor and presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg. Now, one of the investigators who worked that case is giving insight.
Those are the big moments in law enforcement. Those are the ones that demand 100% perfection because somebody's life is potentially hanging in the balance.
Lieutenant Jeremy Muxlow was off duty from his job at Colorado's Rio Blanco County Sheriff's Office in 2022 when he learned a housekeeper at Michael Bloomberg's Colorado ranch had been abducted at gunpoint. A man used this truck to ram the gate. According to the Justice Department, Joseph Beecher hoped to kill the former New York City mayor and presidential candidate. And when he couldn't find Bloomberg, he took a woman hostage instead, kidnapping her and forcing her to drive him to a motel in another state.
My mind was in battle mode. Like, we've got to find the lady, we've got to identify the suspect, we've got to start trying to get directions of travel and locations.
How does having a high-profile person who is connected to the case impact what you are able to do as a detective or an investigator?
It can make it challenging. No offense to Mr. Bloomberg whatsoever, but that didn't bother me at that point. All that I was focused on 100% was just finding our victim.
Muxlow has been watching from afar as investigators try desperately to crack the case of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, acknowledging that in a day and age with artificial intelligence, any ransom notes will be challenging.
You really have to be very, very skeptical of those and kind of take them with a grain of salt. I mean, you still hold on to the fact that it's evidence, but you have to verify those sources, where they came from.
Muxlow says the kidnapper in his case 4 years ago made a significant mistake that he won't reveal to avoid cluing in other kidnapping suspects. But this police video from less than 24 hours after the abduction shows a successful rescue with the victim still alive. Muxlow is hoping for a similar outcome in the Guthrie case that has captivated the nation.
Patience, prayer, honestly, is huge. And just know that the best of the best in our nation are focused in Arizona right now doing what they can do.
And Vinnie Muxlow told me that the victim told him that she prayed the entire time while she was kidnapped and tried to stay calm, and that's what kept her going. The suspect, by the way, was convicted and is now deceased. Vinnie?
Yeah, Lori Jane Bleha, thank you so much. And what an important part of that, the prayer that helped her get through it. Well, let's talk about Nancy Guthrie, a woman who this whole case began when she didn't show up for church service. We have another special guest joining us tonight. Let me introduce trauma therapist and author of Thriving After Trauma, Stories of Living and Healing. Shari Botwin is with us. Shari, thank you so much for being here. Let's talk about Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, sharp as can be. She knows everything that's going on around her. What are your thoughts about her if, in fact, she is being held right now and knows she's being held for ransom?
My thoughts are this woman, from what I've heard, is so incredibly brave and strong. She raised her kids when her husband died suddenly, when Savannah was 16. I would imagine that she is praying and she's thinking about all the people that she loves and that she knows. So many people are really doing whatever they can to get her out of there.
How difficult is it on her, and will the age make it more difficult or less difficult for her because she's lived a life and has experienced so much?
She's lived a very long life, but I think her age, it makes her more vulnerable, especially given she has a lot of medical issues. So I imagine that she's feeling incredibly stranded and just out in the world with lacking the things that she really needs. So I think it's probably really difficult. And I'm also thinking this mom sounds like she is a rock. And I would imagine that she's probably also worried about Savannah and her other kids and thinking about the hell that they're going through.
Yeah, let's talk about Savannah and her brother and her sister. They are put in a really difficult position. There is someone who may have kidnapped them, who's demanding ransom, but there's been no proof of life. There's a deadline approaching. It seems like there's a lot of pressure on them. Obviously, a lot of trauma that we saw in the video. What are your thoughts, and how do Savannah and Annie and Cameron get through this?
It's one of those things I think I can't even believe that they're even standing at this point. They, from what we're seeing, they are reaching out in ways that I think are helping them just go from 1 minute to the next. When we go through something like this, and fortunately most of us will not experience this kind of trauma, but what I know about trauma is that when we're in the fight, when we're trying to get to the end of the road, our survival mechanisms kick in and we do whatever we can to just hang in there and keep fighting. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, we're on day 6 and they look so distraught and so worried, and knowing that she has these health conditions, she doesn't have her medication, she doesn't have access to her device, which helps her to know if the pacemaker is doing what it needs to be doing. It's hard to even put into words what this kind of experience would be like for anyone.
Shari Botwin, appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. All right, the search continues, and obviously, folks, if there's anyone in the area who has any information, please reach out. It may be something that you might not think is significant that may very well help. The tip line number is up on the screen right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for watching, and please think of Nancy Guthrie tonight.